Hey, welcome back. Today's video is called Underground Bunker Staff, and it is exactly what it sounds like. 6 stories, 6 different people, 6 different facilities buried somewhere beneath the earth, government installations, Cold War relics, continuity evaporation sites, and a few places that don't have names you'd recognize because they were never supposed to be public knowledge. These aren't ghost stories. They're not urban legends. Every single one of these accounts was either submitted to us directly, sourced from online forums, where former government and military contractors gather to talk about things they probably shouldn't, or pieced together from decommissioned facility documents that leaked out over the years. We've done our best to verify what we can. What we can't verify, we'll tell you. What ties all 6 of these stories together isn't the facilities, it's the people who worked in them. The night shift staff, the maintenance crews, the comms officers, the psychologists, and the engineers, and the supply managers. The people who spent months underground with no sunlight, limited communication with the outside world, and a very specific set of rules designed to keep them from asking too many questions. 6 stories. Back to back. No breaks, no interruptions, just one long descent. Before we go under, though, if you're watching this and you haven't yet, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and we put a lot of work into every single story. If you make it to the end of tonight's video, drop a comment letting us know which story hit hardest. I'm genuinely curious, alright? Lights down. Let's go underground. Story 1. The inventory. The tone shifts slightly slower, more deliberate, like the narrator is reading from notes. There are currently over 150 active continuity of government facilities in the United States alone. Most Americans have never heard of them. They exist beneath ordinary-looking buildings, federal offices, rural maintenance depots, unremarkable concrete structures in the middle of nowhere. And their purpose is simple. If the country as we know it ceases to function above ground, these facilities are where the government goes to keep running. They have cafeterias, they have dormitories, they have supply rooms. And according to a man named Daniel Reese, they have at least one other thing that no facility manager has ever been able to explain. This account was first posted to a private forum called DepthsNet, a closed community for former government contractors and federal employees to share experiences they can't discuss through official channels. The thread was titled simply, "Supply Discrepancies Anyone Else?" It was posted in 2019, and it received 47 replies before the thread was locked by a moderator and the original post was deleted. A user archived it before it disappeared. We received a copy of that archive through a source who asked to remain unnamed. Daniel Reese was a GS7 supply technician. His job at the facility, which he refers to only as site killer, though we haven't been able to match that. Designation to any public record was straightforward. He managed incoming and outgoing inventory, food supplies, maintenance materials, medical stock, electronics, bedding, cleaning chemicals. Every item in the facility had a number. Every number had a location. Every transaction was logged. He had been doing this job for 11 months without incident. The incident started with a box of latex gloves. Daniel writes, and I'm going to read directly from the archived post here, lightly edited for clarity. It wasn't anything dramatic at first. Did a weekly audit every Monday morning, standard procedure, compared the physical count to the digital log. The first time I noticed it, I figured I'd made an error. 1 box of medium latex gloves checked out from Storage Bay 4C at 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday. I keep meticulous records. That checkout should have had an employee ID attached to it. There was no ID, just the timestamp and the item number. I flagged it, figured someone had forgotten to log their credentials, moved on. The next week it happened again. Different item, a box of sterile gauze pads. Same deal. 2:14 a.m., no employee ID, no authorization code, no counter signature, just a timestamp. The week after that, a single flashlight. Batteries included. Daniel says he reported it to his direct supervisor, a woman he calls Harmon, after the third incident. Harmon told him to run a system diagnostic on the inventory terminal. Maybe there was a logging error, so diagnostic came back clean. Harmon told him to update the firmware. He did. It happened again the following week. Same time, 2:14 a.m., he started keeping a personal log. Over the course of 4 months, I recorded 22 unauthorized checkouts, always to 14 a.m., always a Thursday, always a single item, never more than one. The items varied: gloves, gauze, a roll of surgical tape, a packet of ibuprofen, small hand mirror, a box of zip ties, 2 pairs of scissors taken on 2 separate Thursdays, a coil of copper wire, a headlamp, a thermal blanket. He pulled the security footage from the storage bay for the time stamp in question. The footage from 2:09 a.m. to 2:19 a.m. every Thursday was corrupted. Every week. Every single Thursday, that exact 10-minute window, just static. The rest of the footage was fine. Now, Daniel is careful here to say he doesn't know what to make of this. He's not claiming ghosts. He's not claiming anything supernatural. What he says next is what concerns me more than any ghost story ever could. I decided to be in storage bay for see myself at 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday. I didn't tell anyone. I went in at 2:05, stood in the back of the room behind the tall shelving unit, and waited. The lights in that bay are motion activated. They came on when I walked in and stayed on for a few minutes, then went off. At 2:14 exactly, the lights came back on. Nobody walked in. I watched the door. It didn't open. The lights just came on, the way they do when they detect motion. Then one of the items on shelf 4C7 shifted. I heard it, sort of soft scraping sound, like something being picked up carefully. Then the lights went off. I stood there in the dark for about 2 minutes. Then I turned my own flashlight on and went to shelf 4C7. The item that had been there, a box of nitrile examination gloves, size medium, was gone. Daniel says he checked every subsequent Thursday after that. Same result every time for the remaining 6 weeks of his assignment. He never saw anyone. He never found evidence of a hidden access panel, a concealed door, a second entrance to the bay. He requested access to the facility's full architectural schematics and was denied without explanation. Todd had his contract ended 2 months later. He was not offered a renewal. The last line of his post reads, "I don't know who was in that room. I don't know how they got in. I don't know what they were building or treating or making with those supplies. What I know is that they were careful. They only ever took one thing at a time. They never left a trace. And whatever they needed that mirror for, I've thought about that one a lot. So have I, Daniel. So have I." If you're watching this right now and you've worked in a federal underground facility and experienced something you can't explain, I genuinely encourage you to reach out. We take every account seriously, and we protect our sources completely. The link to do that is in the description. And if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me. We've got 5 more stories, and they do not get easier from here. Story 2 is next. It starts with a sound that no one was supposed to hear. Story 2, the 3 a.m. signal. During the Cold War, the United States and its NATO allies maintained a network of underground relay stations whose sole purpose was to ensure that nuclear command and control signals could survive a first strike. Many of these stations were decommissioned in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Their equipment was stripped, their power was cut, and their locations were quietly removed from active maps. Most of them have been silent for over 30 years. In March of 2021, a former signals intelligence contractor named Mara Voss submitted a written account to a researcher who has been documenting anomalous communications events for the past decade. That researcher shared the document with us, with Mara's knowledge and consent. She asked that the facility's location not be published, and we're honoring that request. What we can tell you is that it was somewhere in the upper Midwest. It was a NATO relay station, that had officially been decommissioned in 1991, and that as of 2019, it had been quietly reactivated as a low-staffing signals monitoring post for people on a 90-day rotation, their job to monitor certain frequency bands for foreign signals intelligence. Mara was the night shift communications officer. She had been there for 61 days when she heard the signal. She describes the night like this. It was a Tuesday, about 3 in the morning. I was monitoring the standard bands. Nothing unusual, standard background noise. Some foreign military comms traffic that we were logging but not analyzing on site. The room was quiet. The equipment was old, most of it, but it functioned. I was half reading a paperback when the tone came through. It wasn't on any of the bands I was monitoring. I want to be very clear about that. It appeared on a frequency that, according to our equipment's own documentation, was not connected to any active receiver in the room. The frequency had been physically disconnected from the antenna array. I could see the disconnected cable from where I was sitting. The tone was clean. That's what I kept thinking. Clean and even and totally regular. A single, sustained note, about 4 seconds long. Then a silence of about 2 seconds, then the tone again. It repeated exactly 9 times. Then it stopped. I sat there for about a minute, just staring at the signal display. Then I recorded it. Then I called it in. Her supervisor, she calls him Garrett, came to the room within 4 minutes. He'd looked at the recording, looked at the disconnected cable, and said, in her words, "That's not possible." He had her run a full diagnostic of the receiving array. The diagnostic confirmed the frequency in question had no active connection to any antenna. There was no pathway by which a signal on that frequency should have registered on their equipment. The recording was logged, tagged as an anomaly, and filed. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same frequency, same clean, even tone. It's 4 seconds on, 2 seconds off, 9 repetitions. 3 a.m. this time, Garrett was awake and in the room with her when it came through. He watched it happen in real time. When it ended, he pulled up the original Cold War documentation for the facility. He was quiet for a long time, Mara writes. Then he turned to me and said, "This frequency was used by this station between 1962 and 1989. It was a check-in signal, automated, sent every 72 hours to confirm the station. The specific pattern, 9 pulses, was the code for a full crew present and no distress." He said the automated system that generated that signal had been physically removed from the facility in 1991. The hardware was decommissioned and destroyed. I asked him what he thought we were. Hearing he didn't answer. The signal appeared 11 more times over the remaining 29 days of Mara's rotation. Always at 3A.M. Always the same pattern. She began cross-referencing the time stamps and discovered something that she says made the hair on her arms stand up. The signal appeared every 72 hours. Exactly, not approximately, not almost. 72 hours to the second. She also discovered that during the facility's original Cold War operation, the check-in signal had been transmitted on a 72-hour cycle. Whatever was sending that signal, she writes, hadn't missed a check-in since 1962. It had kept transmitting quietly on a disconnected frequency for nearly 60 years. And until we were put in that room with equipment sensitive enough to detect it, no one had noticed. The last thing I wrote in my personal log before I left that facility was a question. I wrote, "Who is it checking in with? What happens if the check-in ever stops?" I still don't have an answer. We attempted to follow up with the researcher who shared this account. He confirmed the document's authenticity and told us that Mara had since spoken to 2 other former signals technicians who described similar, unexplained transmissions at separate decommissioned facilities. He said none of them had ever received an official explanation. He also told us that when he last spoke to Mara, she mentioned something she hadn't included in the written account, something she'd only noticed after she left. She said that on the night of the very first transmission, she'd checked the facility's physical visitor log out of habit. The log showed that no one had entered or exited the facility between midnight and 6 a.m., but the log also showed something else. A single entry, written in handwriting, that didn't match any current staff member. In ink that the facility manager said looked decades old, though the page it was written on was brand new. The entry read, 3 a.m. check. All present. Stay with me. We're 2 stories in. For more to go. And story 3 goes somewhere I genuinely was not prepared for when I first read it. If you're enjoying this series so far, hit that like button. It keeps this channel alive, and it means we can keep finding stories like these and bringing them to you. Subscribe if you haven't. Let's go deeper. Story 3. The Sublevel. Here is something that the general public doesn't fully appreciate about large underground government facilities. Nobody knows all of them. I don't mean that in a conspiratorial sense. I mean it practically. These installations were built over decades, some dating back to World War II by different agencies, different contractors, under different classification levels. They were expanded, modified, partially demolished, and rebuilt without centralized documentation. Some sections of some facilities have been sealed off so long that no one currently employed by the relevant agency has ever been in them. Maintenance crews sometimes find corridors that don't appear on the maps they were given. Most of the time, there's a mundane explanation: a storage area that was reclassified, a utility tunnel from a prior construction phase. Most of the time. This story comes from a maintenance technician who goes by the username Cold Joint Tech on a subreddit dedicated to government infrastructure. Workers, a small community where people vent about their jobs, share strange experiences, and ask each other procedural questions. The post was made in late 2020 and received several hundred upvotes before Cold Joint Tech deleted their account. A number of users had saved and screenshotted the text. One of those users forwarded it to us after seeing a previous video we made on a similar topic. The person goes by the initials KA. That's all we know about them. The facility is described only as a federal continuity site in the Mid-Atlantic region, with an operational history dating to the early 1960s. KA had worked at the facility for 4 years. She knew the physical layout well. She thought she knew all of it. It started with a work order, she writes. I came in for my Tuesday morning shift, and there was a paperwork order sitting on my keyboard. Not in the system, a physical paper, which was unusual. Hand-filled. It said there was a water reclamation malfunction on sublevel 4, intake manifold B, and I needed to get down there and assess. I went to my supervisor immediately. Guess we don't have a sublevel 4. Our facility goes to sublevel 3. I've been on every level. I know the stairwells. I know the elevator shafts. There is no sublevel 4. Her supervisor looked at the work order, shrugged, and told her it was probably a typo. Someone had meant sublevel 3, sector 4. She should go check the intake manifold on sublevel 3 and close out the work order. She went to sublevel 3. She found the intake manifolds on sublevel 3. All of them were functioning normally. She started to write up a no-fault found report. Then she noticed the elevator. There is one service elevator on the east side of sublevel 3. I have used it hundreds of times. I know its button panel. There are 4 buttons. B for basement entry level. 1, 2, and 3. That's it. That's all there's ever been. When I got in the elevator to go back up, there were 5 buttons. The 5th button was below the 3. It was unlabeled. It's just a smooth metal circle like the others. Sitting below the sublevel 3 button in the exact position where a sublevel 4 button would be, KA says. She stood in the elevator for about 30 seconds just staring at the panel. She pressed the 1 button and went up. She went directly to her supervisor's office and described what she'd seen. The supervisor went down with her to look. He stood in the elevator and stared at the panel for a long time. Then he pressed the unmarked button. Nothing happened. The doors didn't close. The elevator didn't move. The button didn't light up. He pressed it several more times. Nothing. He got out of the elevator and told me to write up a maintenance report on the button and submit it to facilities. He said it was probably a leftover from a prior construction phase, a deactivated stub from when the shaft was extended. He seemed unbothered. I was not unbothered, but I filed the report and went back to work. 3 weeks later, Ka came in for her morning shift to find another paperwork order on her keyboard. Same handwriting, same format. Sublevel 4, intake manifold B water reclamation malfunction. I went to the elevator. I pressed the button. This time the doors closed. The elevator descended. I know every sound that elevator makes. The cable tension, the brake system, the way the doors seal. This was all the same. But the descent took longer than it should have. Significantly longer. Sublevel 3 is maybe 30 feet below the entry level. It felt like twice that. Maybe more. The doors opened. Ka's description of what she found is detailed and dispassionate. She writes like an engineer assessing a work site, which is both remarkable and deeply unsettling given the circumstances. It was a corridor, concrete walls, maybe 8 feet across. Overhead fluorescents, not the same fixtures as the rest of the facility, older ones, the long tubes, the kind that take a second to warm up. They came on as I stepped out of the elevator, motion activated. The corridor extended maybe 100 feet before turning right. The air was cool but dry, which was different from the rest of the facility, which always has some moisture. No smell, very quiet. I could see the water reclamation manifold from the elevator. It was the first thing on the left. Maybe 10 feet from the elevator doors? Old equipment, the kind I'd read about in legacy system documentation but never worked on in person. Late 1960s design was a small pilot light on the main junction box that was cycling red off, which is a fault indication. I fixed it. It took about 20 minutes. Standard stuck float valve, residual mineral buildup. Simple. I did not walk to the end of the corridor. I did not turn the corner. I went back to the elevator and went up. She reported the repair. She filed a work order completion. She submitted a separate incident report describing the additional level. She was called into her supervisor's office the following morning. He told me the elevator malfunction had been investigated and there was no additional level. He told me the report I'd filed had been forwarded to security and that security had reviewed the elevator and found no anomaly. He told me I should take the rest of the week as paid leave and come back fresh on Monday. I asked him about the repair. The water reclamation manifold I'd serviced. I asked him if the fault light had cleared. He looked at me for a moment and then said, "What fault light?" Ka writes that when she came back on Monday, the elevator panel had 4 buttons again. She checked every morning for the remainder of her time at the facility. 4 buttons. Always 4 buttons. The original paperwork orders had disappeared from her desk. She'd photographed them with her personal phone the second time around. Those photographs, she says, are still on her phone. The last paragraph of her post reads, "I've thought about this for a long time. Thing I can't get past is the work orders. Someone knew there was a fault on sublevel 4. Someone needed it fixed. Someone left me a work order twice because they needed a specific person to go down there. Not security, not an engineer. A maintenance tech who knows water reclamation systems. The second work order appeared the same day I'd told my supervisor I wasn't unbothered. Someone was listening. Story 4 is the one that stayed with me the longest after I first read it. It's about a relief team. 8 people who went underground to rotate out a crew and what they found when they got there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't go anywhere. Story 4. The rotation. Standard procedure at most long-term underground government facilities requires that staff rotate on a fixed cycle, typically 60 to 120 days, to prevent the psychological effects of prolonged subterranean isolation. Sensory monotony, disrupted circadian rhythms, social friction, and what some researchers call the compression effect, a growing sense that the world above has become abstract, unreal, barely relevant, are all well-documented risks. The rotation is considered one of the most important safety protocols in underground facility management. It requires, in theory, that the incoming crew arrives before the outgoing crew leaves. There's an overlap period, usually 48 hours, designed to allow for handover briefings, equipment familiarization, and what the documentation calls normalcy reinforcement. In plain language, the outgoing crew helps the incoming crew feel like everything is fine. This story was shared in a closed Facebook group for government facilities contractors. The original poster, who identified himself only as Terrence M., was a member of a relief team. His post was shared to us by a mutual contact who was in the group and vouched for Terrence's background in the industry. We verified one specific detail independently: the facility designation. Terrence uses a 4-digit alphanumeric code, matches a facility in an older DOE infrastructure document that was partially declassified in 2017. We are not publishing the designation. Terrence was the team lead of an 8-person relief crew. Their job was to travel to the facility, relieve the outgoing crew of 7 people, and begin a 90-day rotation. When they arrived, there was only one person waiting for them. His name was Orlov, Terrence writes. David Orlov, he was a systems analyst, had been on the outgoing crew. When we came through the second airlock door, he was standing in the main corridor, just standing there, hands at his sides. He looked at us for a long time before he said anything. The first thing he said was, "How long has it been?" I told him we were on schedule, right on time. He nodded very slowly and said, "Okay." Terrence asked immediately where the rest of the outgoing crew was. Orlov told him they had departed. Terrence pointed out that no departure had been logged at the facility's egress system. Required a logged exit for each individual, and he'd reviewed the system status before entering. There were no logged departures for any of the 7 crew members. Orlov said, "They went out the other way. There was no other way." The facility had one entrance and one exit, which were the same airlock. Terrence knew this. Every member of his relief team knew this. I took Orlov aside and spoke to him privately. He seemed calm, very calm. Not agitated, not distressed, not frightened, just settled. The way people are when they've made peace with something. Orlov's account of what happened to the other 6 crew members was, in Terrence's words, internally consistent but physically impossible. Orlov said that on day 61 of the rotation, approximately 3 weeks prior to the scheduled relief, the rest of the crew had become aware of the lower section and had chosen to go there. He said they had not been coerced. They had gone willingly, one by one, over the course of 5 days. He'd remained because it wasn't his turn yet. I asked him what the lower section was. Terrence writes. He said it was the part of the facility that hadn't been built yet. I asked him to clarify. Said it's not built on this side of things. It's built from the inside out. I did not know what that meant. Didn't elaborate. I asked him if the other 6 crew members were alive. He said, "They're somewhere. It's not the same as alive, and it's not the same as not alive." Terrence called a security hold immediately. The facility was locked down. His team secured the premises, and an emergency response team was contacted. Orlov cooperated fully with everything. He answered questions calmly, ate a full meal, slept. He did not appear physically unwell. His blood work taken by the team medic came back normal. The facility was searched top to bottom. 6 people were not found. Their personal effects, clothing, bedding, personal items were in their quarters, undisturbed, as if they'd simply stepped out. The food consumption logs showed that all 7 crew members had eaten every scheduled meal for the first 58 days. Then the logs showed food being taken for only one person for 3 weeks. The security team looked for the lower section. They found every room, every corridor, every utility space on the facility map. Nothing unusual. The floor plans matched the physical structure exactly. There was no lower section. They took Orlov out with us, Terrence writes. He walked out of that facility looking over his shoulder the whole time, the way you look when you're leaving something behind, something you're sad to leave. At the top of the main elevator, just before the outer door, he stopped. He said, "You should know, I've been alone down here for 22 days, and I wasn't alone." He said it the way you'd tell someone the weather. Then he walked out into the sunlight and put his face up toward the sky, and he started crying. Terrence says the subsequent investigation found no evidence of what happened to the 6 missing crew members. No foul play, no structural failure, no evidence of voluntary departure. The case was eventually classified. He never went back underground. He took a desk job within the same contracting firm and retired early. His closing line, "I think about what Orlov said all the time. Wasn't my turn yet, like there was a process, an order of operations, like whatever was down there was working through a list. And for reasons I'll never understand, David Orlov was last on that list. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if we'd arrived a day later." We're 4 stories deep. 2 more. Story 5 is the one that frightened me the most on a personal level, not because of what happens, but because of who it happened to and how ordinary their job was supposed to be. Stay with me. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's keep going. Story 5. The Pattern. There is a small and rarely discussed field of occupational psychology dedicated specifically to staff who work in extreme isolation environments, deep-sea research platforms, polar research stations, submarine crews, and yes, underground government facilities. The psychological pressures of these environments are unique enough that standard clinical tools don't always apply cleanly. A practitioner working in this field requires specific training, a high security clearance, and an unusual capacity for discretion. Dr. Ellen Sato had all 3. We want to be careful here about how we characterize this account, because Dr. Sato is a real person. She has published academic work. She is still professionally active, and while she shared this story voluntarily, she did so under specific conditions. We agreed not to publish her real name. Ellen Sato is a pseudonym she chose herself. The account is drawn from a series of recorded conversations she had with a journalist who has been writing a book about the mental health infrastructure of classified government programs. That journalist shared transcripts with us with Dr. Sato's consent. For 11 years, Dr. Sato conducted post-rotation psychological evaluations for staff, leaving a specific network of underground facilities. She described this work as largely routine, assessing reintegration readiness, flagging trauma responses, screening for cognitive changes resulting from prolonged isolation. Most evaluations were uneventful. Most staff were fine. In year 7, she noticed something she couldn't explain. "I evaluated somewhere between 300 and 400 individuals during my time in this role," she says in the transcripts. The vast majority of those evaluations were unremarkable. People were tired, a little socially recalibrated, occasionally dealing with disrupted sleep patterns. Normal. In year 7, I was doing a standard evaluation of a debrief subject, I'll call him Patient A, who had completed a 90-day rotation at a specific facility. Facility 7, we'll call it. Patient A was a communications technician. Healthy, cognitively intact, no indication of significant distress. About 40 minutes into the session, he mentioned, almost in passing, a recurring dream he'd had during the rotation. He described standing in a corridor he didn't recognize, not part of the facility he worked in somewhere else. The corridor was very long, and the walls were covered in writing, floor to ceiling, dense text in a language he couldn't read. At the end of the corridor there was a door. He always woke up before he reached the door. I noted it as a standard isolation anxiety dream. I moved on. 3 months later, Dr. Sato evaluated a second subject who had rotated out of Facility 7. Patient B was a mechanical engineer with a different background, different personal history, and no social overlap with Patient A, as far as she could determine. Patient B described a recurring dream he'd had during the rotation. He said he was standing in a corridor he didn't recognize. The walls were covered in writing, floor to ceiling. He couldn't read it. At the end of the corridor, there was a door. I put my pen down. She says she asked Patient B several follow-up questions. The corridor in his dream was concrete. The writing appeared to be, he struggled to describe it, layered as if written over itself multiple times in slightly different scripts. The door was a standard institutional door, metal, gray, with a handle but no window. He said he never reached the door. He always woke up before he got there. I went home that night and I looked at my notes from Patient A's evaluation. The corridor was concrete. The writing appeared layered. The door was gray metal. He never reached it. They had described the same dream, word for word in some passages. Over the following 2 years, Dr. Sato discreetly tracked the debriefs of everyone who rotated out of Facility 7. She used a standardized question about sleep and dreaming as a regular part of her evaluation, nothing that would flag unusually in her reports. 14 of the 26 subjects she evaluated from Facility 7 described the corridor dream. Subjects from other facilities did not describe it. She checked. It was specific to Facility 7, appearing in subjects regardless of their job role, psychological background, or length of rotation. The 14 subjects who described it had never met each other, as far as she could determine. Their rotation cycles didn't overlap. They could not have shared the dream through conversation. I reported it, she says. I filed a formal internal report noting an anomalous pattern in debrief data from a specific facility. I recommended a review of the facility's environmental conditions, air quality, electromagnetic output, anything that might be causing shared cognitive experiences. I thought there had to be a rational explanation. The response I received was a form acknowledgement. Standard language. Your report has been received and will be reviewed. No follow-up. No questions. No investigation that I was made aware of. She raised it again 6 months later, was told the matter had been reviewed and no anomaly had been found. The thing that bothers me most isn't that they dismissed it. It's that they weren't surprised. When I described the corridor dream to my supervisor, the concrete walls, the layered writing, the gray door, the fact that no one ever reached it, he didn't react the way you react when someone tells you something new and strange. He had the expression of someone being told something they already know, he said. Thank you for your diligence, Ellen, and he ended the meeting. She retired from the position the following year. She says she has never stopped thinking about what was behind the gray door, or more specifically, why no one who dreamed of the corridor ever reached it. Dreams take you where your subconscious expects to go. If 26 people, or more, given the ones I didn't evaluate, were dreaming their way down that corridor and stopping at the door every time, the question I keep asking myself is, what did their subconscious know about what was on the other side that kept them from opening it? And I think about the people who didn't stop, the people who made it to the door, because statistically, over enough iterations, over enough dreamers, someone was going to reach it. I think about what they found. I think about whether they were able to wake up after. One story left. Story 6 is the one that was hardest to tell. It comes from a source that no longer exists, recovered from a decommissioned Cold War facility that was demolished in 2018, 3 months before anyone had a chance to go back for it.
Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new.
We're almost at the end of the descent, and then we go all the way down. Story 6. The Last Log. In the winter of 2018, a company contracted to handle the demolition of a decommissioned government facility. In the rural northeastern United States, discovered a sealed metal storage box in a utility space on the lowest level of the structure. The box contained a hard drive, a printed technical manual, and a handwritten note taped to the inside of the lid that read, "If you find this, read the drive first, then decide what to do." The demolition company's site manager, a man named Gerard Pollard, took the box home that night instead of turning it over to the clearance officer. He has said, in subsequent conversations, that he doesn't fully know why he did it. Only that something about the note made him feel like turning it over was the wrong choice. He kept the box for almost 2 years before showing it to anyone. Eventually, he showed it to a friend with an IT background. The hard drive was damaged but partially recoverable. What was recovered were audio logs, recorded by staff of the facility during the final operational period, spanning approximately 4 weeks. The recordings were indexed by date and time. Gerard provided us with the transcript of those recordings. He asked us to read the final entries in full. He said, "People should know what was down there, not to be scared, just to know." The facility had been operational since 1964. It was a continuity. Operations site, the kind designed to house essential government functions during a nuclear emergency. It was decommissioned in 1993 and formally closed. All staff were supposed to have evacuated by March 14th of that year. The logs begin on February 19th and end on March 31st. The evacuation was on March 14th. There are 17 days of recordings after the evacuation. The early logs, February 19th through March 12th, are routine. Staff updates, equipment status checks, inventory notes, a few personal observations recorded out of habit or boredom. 7 staff members are identifiable across the early recordings. A facility manager named Warren, communications officer named Diane, 2 maintenance technicians named Felix and Romero, a medical officer named Dr. Kwan, a systems analyst named Patricia, and a security officer named Holt. 7 people. Ordinary work. The usual texture of underground life: procedural, repetitive, occasionally sardonic. On March 3rd, Diane records a brief note. Something is interfering with the lower frequency monitoring equipment. Can't isolate the source. Flag for Felix. On March 5th, Felix records. Checked the equipment. No fault found. Interference source unidentified. Seems to be coming from below us. There's nothing below us. On March 9th, Patricia records. Started dreaming again. The corridor with the writing. 3rd time this week. This is the first and only mention of a dream in the logs. Nobody responds to it directly on tape. Whether anyone else in the facility was having the same dream is unknown. The March 14th log, the day of evacuation, is recorded by Warren. Facility personnel have completed egress protocol as of 14:32 hours. All 7 staff accounted for. I'm recording this as a formal closure log as required by protocol. Equipment is shut down in sequence. Power systems on backup cycle. The facility will go to 0 occupancy standby as of tonight. Feels strange to lock it up after this long. Feels strange to go. That's the log for March 14th. Facility closed. That is the last official log. The next recording is time-stamped. March 15th, 3 a.m. The voice on the March 15th recording is not identified. It is a male voice, calm, conversational, speaking as though making a routine entry. Log for March 15th. Status is nominal. Equipment is running. I'm going to do a walkthrough of the lower levels this morning and check the things that need checking. The writing on the walls in corridor 7G is getting harder to read. Not sure if that's the lighting or something else. We'll note it. Diane's equipment is still picking up the signal from below. I've started to understand parts of it, I think. It's like a language you heard as a child and forgot. It comes back in pieces. Logging off for now. There. Is no corridor 7G in any facility documentation? There is no corridor 7 of any designation. It's the facility's corridor naming convention, uses letters only. The next log is March 17th. Same unidentified voice. Spent some time with the lower section today. It's larger than I expected. The geometry is different down here. I don't mean that as a metaphor. The geometry is actually different. I've been trying to work out the mathematics of it, and I think I'll have something worth recording soon. I miss the others, but they'll be along. These things take the time they take. The logs continue every 2 or 3 days through the rest of March. The unidentified voice grows slightly different as the recordings progress. Not distressed, not frightened, but altered in some quality that is very difficult to describe from transcription alone. Gerard, who listened to the audio, said, "It's like the voice gets further away even when the volume doesn't change. The second to last recording is March 29th, almost ready. I want to put down something for whoever finds this because someone will find this eventually. People always find things. The facility is fine. The equipment is fine. Everything up here is exactly as you left it. I've made sure of that. The door between here and the lower section is in corridor 7G, and it is closed. It is going to stay closed, and you don't need to find it. There's nothing dangerous here. I want to be clear about that. There's nothing that wants to hurt you. It doesn't work that way. It's more like gravity. It doesn't want anything. It just pulls. If you find this hard drive, take it. Take it out of here. Show people if you want to. But don't come looking for corridor 7G. Not because it will hurt you. Because once you know where the door is, you can't unknow it. And the door, once you know it's there, has a way of finding you in the dark. The final recording is March 31st. It is 43 seconds long. The first 30 seconds are silence. Then the voice. It's time. Logging off. Then silence again. And at the very end. And Gerard says this is the detail that has stayed with him. The detail he hears when he tries to fall asleep. A sound. Soft sound. Unmistakably familiar. The sound of a door. Opening. Then the recording ends. The hard drive has been in Gerard's possession since 2018. He has no intention of going back to where the facility stood. The demolition was completed in the spring of 2018. The structure was leveled, the site was cleared, and as far as the public record is concerned, there is nothing there. Gerard says that 3 weeks after the demolition was completed, he drove past the cleared site on his way home from a job. It was a gray afternoon in early April. The ground was flat, bare. He says he slowed down as he passed, just to look. He says that at the center of the cleared ground where the facility entrance had been, where the elevator shaft had gone down, there was a rectangle of darker soil. Not disturbed, not excavated, just different. As if something below the surface was expressing itself through the ground above it, as if the lower section was still there. As if it had always been there, long before the facility was built over it. As if it was waiting, quietly, for the next set of footsteps. I didn't stop the car, he told us. I kept driving. I've driven a different route ever since, but I think about corridor 7G. I think about the door. I think about how the voice said, once you know where it is, you can't unknow it. I know too much about where it is. A long pause, then the narrator's voice returns. Warmer, quieter. That's the series. 6 stories, 6 facilities. 6 sets of people who went underground to do ordinary jobs and came back, some of them with things they couldn't explain and couldn't let go of. Daniel Reese, counting items taken from a shelf by hands he never saw. Mara Voss, listening to a signal that had been transmitting faithfully into silence for 60 years. K.A. riding an elevator to a level that didn't exist and fixing something that needed fixing. Terrence, arriving at a facility to relieve a crew that wasn't there anymore and driving away with the one man who remained. Dr. Ellen Sato, charting the same dream in mind after mind after mind and wondering what lay behind a gray metal door, a gray Pollard. Driving a different route home every day since April 2018. I want to thank all of them, the ones who talked to us, the ones who posted and deleted, the ones who wrote things down in the small hours of the morning because they needed someone to know. This channel exists because of people like that. People who carry something strange and find a place to set it down just for a moment where others can see it. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you, genuinely. That means everything to this channel. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It helps more people find us. and it tells the algorithm that this kind of storytelling is worth surfacing. And if you're not subscribed yet, please do. We drop new content regularly, and there are many more stories like these waiting to be told. Drop a comment telling me which story got to you the most. I read every single one. Till next time, stay curious, stay grounded, maybe, just maybe, leave the lights on tonight. Good night.